something from another era, and we Captain's Log, May 13th, 2016. Ooh, it's Friday the 13th, so let's talk about something really scary, like Supergirl moving to CW. Ooh! No, I'm kidding. This is not a terrifying thing. It's actually really good news, at least that Supergirl is getting renewed, because it was up in the air there for a bit. And on my most recent Supergirl vlog, when we finished the first season, I said that it was already renewed, and I was wrong on that. I don't know where I was getting my information on that. I guess I was just assuming because we hadn't heard that it was canceled. I wouldn't have figured that we would have waited this long to find out whether or not that was renewed. But anyway, that's on me. I apologize on that. I was like, oh yes, of course. It's certainly going to get renewed. Surely the ratings are good enough, and because the ratings all season had been just okay. It had really strong numbers, and then it kind of leveled out, and it didn't look like it would have been on the chopping block. But the problem, if you're not aware, is the high price tag once you add in licensing, because since it was on CBS instead of the CW, it cost more to license the characters from DC because of the arrangement that Warner Brothers has with CBS. So the CW is a network that is shared with CBS and with Warner Brothers, and so they have a really interesting relationship in how they share programming and stuff. And so anyway, the reason, if memory serves, that it was on the CW, or excuse me, that it was on CBS in the first place is because the CW passed on it. It was too expensive for them, and at one time it seemed like the rumor was they didn't want to be labeled the superhero network, but then it seemed like, but then I read that it seemed to be more because, as I said, they didn't want to pay for it. It was too expensive, and maybe it was a little bit of both. And now neither of those things seem to be detriment to the CW going ahead and picking it up for a second season to make sure that it doesn't die. And I'm really glad that that's happening, and that they were able to work something out, and there was a negotiation that turned out positively. It's certainly possible that we don't get as good of a second season as we could have gotten if it stayed on CBS, and I'll talk about a few reasons for that. So there are major pros and cons for this, but obviously I would prefer for the chance to be taken that it's not as good to go to the CW than to see it canceled entirely, especially since it ended on an interesting cliffhanger. Reportedly from a couple of different websites that I've read, that the writers, the producers, had no idea, allegedly, who is actually in the pod at the end of the cliffhanger, and it's one of those kind of best of both worlds things where we just write it into a corner and hope that we can write ourselves out of it after that. And sometimes really cool things come from that. So I actually kind of like that, potentially. They got a little bit of time to figure it out. But anyway, so it's really good that it's going to stick around. Being on the CW means that it's likely to have more multiversal crossovers with the other CW shows. There's a part of me that can't help but wish that this weren't where it was in the first place, that the CW didn't get the show initially, and that Supergirl wasn't just already set up to be in that universe. Now you might say, well, Captain Logan, you can't have the Supergirl that we have in this show and the CW shows the way they are, Flash and Legends and Arrow, because this is a world that has super science and that has magic, but where nobody has heard about extraterrestrials yet. We haven't met any aliens, and that is absolutely true, but I initially, if you've been watching my logs on this, said all the way back when Supergirl was first announced that I would love to see it set in this continuity and for Supergirl to exist instead of Superman, and for a similar story to be told, but to see what it would be like if you had Supergirl instead of Superman. And that is probably, I think, likely to be what we would have gotten if they set it in this continuity, because or at the very least you'd have to somehow rather establish Superman and Supergirl at the same time. I don't really know how you do that, but like if you're going to do Supergirl and not do Superman in this continuity, you would have to introduce them as opposed to having them be there already. Because and people have tried to tell me that no, because of little Easter eggs and name drops, Superman already exists in this universe, already completely pre-established. No, I don't buy that at all. There are little Easter eggs here and there, but that doesn't mean that you have a Metropolis that is fully set up with a Superman and that people are aware of him, because people would be talking about extraterrestrials, and the Flash would not have been surprised by that when he went over to Supergirl. And I think that's made pretty darn clear, if it wasn't already, and I think it was once you've got the Flash crossover. But I do think that people are right when they say that now this is going to be on the CW, now that this is going to be on the CW, you're likely to see a whole lot more crossover, and it probably won't be just a once-a-season thing. I would be really surprised if we didn't do some kind of an arc where Supergirl shows up in, since we've had Flash in her universe, where she shows up in flashes and maybe jumps between a couple of the different shows, or has like a big two-parter where she's in one and then goes in, she's in one city, maybe, you know, in one she's in Central City, and then in the next she's in Starling City. I think it'd be really cool, even though I don't think the show has been that great. Hopefully the writing gets better next season. I think it'd be cool to have Supergirl on the time ship in Legends of Tomorrow, assuming that it's still a time travel show. I mean, since that's been talked about as being apparently maybe an anthology show, I suppose it's possible that each season is a different thing and it's not necessarily a time travel thing. If they made it I mean, I could see all kinds of radical things. You know, I could see characters from Supergirl crossing over, and maybe some kind of a superhero that's in that show could become a character on Legends of Tomorrow, crossing multiverses. Or crossing universes through the multiverse. You know, might it be cool if Martian Manhunter had a stint on one of these shows, or was even one of the main characters in Legends of Tomorrow? Be cool if he wasn't dumbed down and he was written right, you know. But I guess the biggest concern right now for me is how much of the staff of this show is going to be able to stick around, because the production is being moved to Vancouver, which is where the rest of this stuff is filmed. And that's another reason to assume that you'll see a lot more crossover. Is it going to have the same writing staff? Is it going to have the same special effects team? And what is what's the production value of this going to look like now? Because one of the things that people have been really impressed with, of course, with Supergirl, is how good it looks for television. I stand by what I said with that first episode, that airplane scene where Supergirl is trying to land it over the over the river. It just or the I don't know. Are they on a coast in that show? I don't even know. Anyway, it's over a bridge. She's trying to land the plane, and that looks cinematic to me. That looks good enough for big screen. I don't know if it'll look that good, but the production values for Arrow and Flash and Legends have been pretty decent, pretty comparable to the best things that are on television right now for really big special effects shows. For the most part, there's some really shoddy CG stuff here and there, and I think that sometimes they've gotten a little bit lazier than I thought that they were trying to be in earlier seasons. Is it possible that it looks exactly the same because it doesn't have those licensing issues, and so the cost ends up being somewhat similar, somewhat comparable? I don't know. I guess we'll have to see. Like I said, there's less shoddy looking stuff in Supergirl than there has been in the other CW shows, but they've always looked good enough that as long as the scripts are good, the writing and acting is really good, it's not going to bother me. And of course, I can watch a really crappy looking show that's really super well written, and I start to care a whole lot less about that. But then the other thing I want to mention is I was already kind of worried, because we got to remember that it's another Greg Berlanti thing. We have the same main producers on this show, and it already, to me, was starting to look like at the end there, with a somewhat disappointing finale compared especially to the setup with the beginning of that two-parter. it really started to look to me like it's got a good chance at going south in its second season, like Arrow did and like Flash kind of has done also. Of course, Arrow didn't get really bad until 3, but that second season was really convoluted, and it just didn't really seem to know where to go past a certain point. And it seemed to kind of rest on its laurels a little bit. Yeah, pun intended. And with Supergirl, I thought it was a smarter. I think that show is too smart for that last episode that we got, where it starts to kind of rest too much on, is starting to rely too much on, this is a superhero show, we have costumes, we have cool special effects, and don't think beyond the spectacle. And when you do stuff like having a bad guy that has a big army of Kryptonians, and he seems to completely, conveniently forget that he had an army at all, that's a huge problem. That is impossible to suspend disbelief at that point, and I couldn't even believe that we went there. A lot of shoddy writing and shoddy plotting in that last episode, and so I was already concerned about it. And the question is, should I be more concerned story writing wise with the move to CW than I was with CBS? I don't know. It might end up exactly, from a story perspective, to be exactly the same thing. And there's no way to know now. But either way, I'm glad that it's getting renewed. There was cause for concern there for a minute that CW might pass on it. With their relationship with CBS, I don't know if there was really any danger of that, because I don't know how exactly that works. They're kind of a child company, is what they tend to be talked about as, to that major network, so they might have been able to kind of tell them, you're going to take the show. I don't know how that works, so, who knows. But at this point, the CW is kind of turning into the superhero network. With as many comic book related shows as they're going to have, and especially when Riverdale comes in, they're supposed to have this Archie show, which I guess is actually going into production and definitely happening now. If that's definitely happening, they're going to have 5. They've got the 3 CW shows currently in that continuity. They've got Supergirl that is kind of in the continuity. They've got iZombie, which is outside of that, and then they're going to have this Riverdale thing. So that's 3 iZombie, Supergirl, no, 6. They'll have 6 with Riverdale. I would be really surprised if CW didn't start gearing their advertising and their promotional stuff more toward this. I would be really surprised if we didn't start seeing a lot of commercials that were like CW, the superhero network. And I mean, maybe they won't call it that. And they have other things that aren't that, but having so many, they have to kind of, I don't want to say steer into that skid, because they've greenlit so many of these things on purpose. They had to know that this is the direction they were going, but they're going to have to kind of call attention to it, or it's going to look a little bit off balance to people. Why do you guys have so many superhero shows when you're trying to be a network that has, other sorts of things? Because they have so many of these superhero things, I'm really hoping that maybe we'll get lucky, and if Matt Ryan is still available, they'll do a Constantine show. If the right writers were attached to it. That's the sticky thing, is that there's all kinds of things I'd love to see them do, but right now their priority seems to be, gimmicks, at least plot-wise. It tends to be gimmicky plot twists and costumes and flashy effects and stuff, and they're skimping real hard on the smart storytelling, which is really unfortunate. So anything set in this universe or connected to this universe, I think, has the potential to be ultimately completely convoluted, if not entirely nonsensical. I also wonder what Supergirl's ratings are going to look like compared to what they were at CBS, because even toward the end, the numbers they were getting at CBS would have been phenomenal numbers for the CW. So Supergirl has the potential to be the highest rated show, at least of the superhero stuff, on that network. And in fact, I think I haven't checked Flash Arrow numbers in a little while. I think Flash and Arrow are still kind of really up there, if not the best rated shows on the CW. So if that's the case, Supergirl could come in and beat all of them and end up being the highest rated show on that network. But I don't know how many of its fans it's going to bring over with it. I imagine the majority of people that were diehard fans of that show aren't going to quit watching it just because it's on the CW. I would figure, unless, of course, the writing starts to wane really hard, really fast. What's kind of cool about this is that it means that in a roundabout way, Superman is almost more in this universe. Like, I realize that we'd already connected this up and it's a multiverse, but if they start crossing more and leaving that door between universes kind of more wide open, now we've got one of the A-list major DC Trinity as part of this universe. And even if we never see his face, I don't know, that's nice. I like having Superman as actually around and existing in this world, even if it's in a multiversal kind of way. And again, I realize that we already had that, but now a little bit more attention can be called to that. We can maybe, what I'd love to see is the Superman philosophy brought into the Flash Arrowverse, and for these characters to be inspired specifically by the way Supergirl and Superman do things. Anyway, let me know what you think about this in the comments. Are you glad that Supergirl is moving to the CW? Do you think that's better than CBS? Would you have liked to have seen that even if it didn't matter if that's what had to happen for it to be renewed? Do you think it would have been better for it to just get canceled? Is it doomed on the CW? Like I said, one of the big questions is the writing staff going to be the same? Because by and large, those scripts were better than any of the other CW shows. I think they're on par, if not better, with than the first season of Arrow and the first half of the second season of Arrow, which is pretty darn stellar, especially for CW standards. But what do you folks think? Leave your comments, let me know. And in the meantime, I'm Captain Logan, and this concludes today's Captain's Log.